Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. We definitely appreciate your time. So today what we're going to be doing is talking about augmented reality for construction sites. And what we're going to be doing is we're utilizing a tool called VisualLive. Now, before we get rolling, everybody's going to be muted for the duration of this. If anybody does have questions, please feel free to drop that into the questions window or into the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on both of those throughout. Now, a little bit of information about who we are. We are Microdesk. We are an AECO technology consulting firm. We've been around since '94. We actually have locations across the entire US as well as in the UK. We have people basically posted all around the world at this point. We have almost 300 professionals on our team with a background in development, architecture, structural engineering, construction. So we cover all the bases and have actually been working in all those bases for quite a long time. Now, what we've been focusing on recently is focusing on globalization, urbanization, and sustainability. So a lot of our clients are really focused on how can they drive their business, how can they protect the environment, how can they actually make sure that the things that they do are going to be better, both for their clients themselves and for the environment as a whole. And we've been working with them to deliver those kind of products. And how we work with them is through design, construction, operations, a little bit of everything. Again, because of our team and their background, we can provide services from a visualization standpoint for creating AR or VR, like some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. Content development for BIM or SIM, again, something that ties into what we're going to talk about today. Creating content, doing assessments, training, again, soup to nuts, anything AECO. And if we work with manufacturing clients, our sister company, M2, works with us on that. So we cover the whole thing. And we work with leading partners like Autodesk, IBM, Penzura, and the ones that we're going to be talking about today are Unity and VisualLive. Now, my name is Peter Marchese. I'm the Senior Technology Evangelist at Microdesk. Basically, what that means is I work with a lot of the emerging technologies. I find out if something's actually useful. Does it say what it does, and does it do what it says on the tin? And then what else can we do with it? How far can you bend it before it breaks? So I've been doing this for about 25 years. I worked as an architect in the field for about 10 years, and I've been doing this with Microdesk now for coming up on 16 years. And I've been using Revit since version 6.1 and BIM 360 since Autodesk first worked with it. Now, what we're going to be focusing on today is VisualLive. We're going to talk a little bit about what it is, why you should actually use it, how it's going to benefit you. And we're going to talk about how does it actually work with the tools that you might already be working with, some of the integrations that it has, so hardware that you can utilize with it, and then how to actually use it. And I will be going into the service itself to do a demo, so it's not just going to be death by PowerPoint today. Now, before we get rolling though, I do have a couple of questions I always like to ask the audience just to get an idea of what their background is, how this information can benefit them. So just a couple of quick questions here. Okay, it looks like most everybody is coming in from a designer or engineering background. Some project managers to see how this could benefit them. That's cool. Okay, next one is, are you currently working with any cloud tools or mobile tools for in the field? All righty. A lot of no's. Hopefully we can change that a little bit today. And then last one here, are you currently using anything for augmented or virtual reality within your practice? Great to see. A lot of people have already used it, or you're planning to take advantage of it soon. That's good to see. Alrighty, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate your time on that. Cool, so let's get rolling here. So now, first thing, what is VisualLive? Okay, well, VisualLive is an augmented reality tool for BIM, basically. So whether you're doing real-time visualization, whether you want to do that in your office, I want to have a better understanding of how this is going to fit, how this is integrating, or when you want to do it out in the field. So I want to walk the site. I want to see something that doesn't exist, but I have a good understanding of how it will interact with the surrounding elements. Is this actually going to fit? Is this actually going to work? Now, one of the great things about this is if you are in the field and I'm walking around, I'm taking a look at things, I can then actually live stream that, whether it's from my tablet or from a HoloLens headset to other people. So think of this example. I'm walking the site and I've got the overlay of the design and I'm looking at that against the backdrop of the real world. And I'm seeing that, wait a minute, this doesn't line up. The model is saying something should be here, but it's actually was constructed over there. Or everything lines up with where it was supposed to be, but we didn't take into consideration something that was protruding from the ceiling or the roof. From that standpoint, I can then show what I'm seeing to other people immediately. And then from that point, I can start to actually communicate with everybody. I can make sure that everybody really has a full understanding of what's happening and what is planned to happen. Then from there, I can take that. If I have any conflicts that are working on things or any conflicts that I find, I can actually create issues and synchronize that with other tools. I can validate the installation or the design based on what I'm looking at. Now, from that, there's a problem or question. I can work with that with a couple of different cloud services, and I'll show you what those are in just a bit. And I can create asset. Sorry. I can create progress tracking that's accurate. I can see the modeled elements on top of the real things, and then I can go through and mark off, okay, was this installed? Has that been inspected? You know, where are we with things? And then I can synchronize that data back home. Now, the great one of this is that if I'm looking at something in the field and I'm using the HoloLens, one of the features is the ability to actually design elements in the field. So what you're looking at there in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen is basically part of it is real, so that would be the blue element. And then I can actually say, okay, well, I need a pipe to come through here and draw that just using the HoloLens in the field. And then I can take that information back into, say, Navisworks. So that way we can work with it and coordinate it and make sure that the intent from the field is actually what's happening from the design standpoint. Now, the really cool part of this that a lot of people are like, wait a minute, I don't understand how it can actually save that much, is the idea that this can avoid laser scanning costs for up to 60%. Now, how this is beneficial is that for a lot of our clients, a lot of people that are working in the field, they're taking scan data. They're utilizing that for a few reasons. One of those reasons is for doing checkups. So I need to get an accurate location of where everything is, maybe not so much for an as-built, but just to make sure that, okay, when we said that this is where all of our core drills are going to be, where all of our penetrations, where all the hangers are going to be, I need to actually coordinate what they did in the field with what we told them to do. This allows me to do that without needing to go out there and do setups, to have somebody walk around with, you know, a $60,000 piece of hardware and make sure that everything works, then sync 20 gigs worth of scan data across the internet back home. This allows me to avoid a lot of that. That's not to say that we don't need to do laser scanning. It just means that we need to do it much less, because this actually covers the use case that a lot of the scans were being used for. Now, in this case, what we're looking at is an example of that. So what we're looking at is people are out in the field, they're walking around, and they're seeing an overlay of equipment at an airport. Now, this equipment has to be placed near the wall. And what he's pointing to right now is some of the hardware that's part of this, and it's too close to the wall. That yellow area is actually area that needs to stay clear from that. And they're realizing that, yeah, this is not going to work where it is. And as they walk around, you see an area that's actually technically clear, but what they didn't take into consideration was that beam over top. So they're able to walk around the site. They're able to see an overlay of the design intent on the real world. And then they can move around and figure out, okay, well, this is actually going to be fine here. That's just too close, so we need to figure out how we're going to handle this. But I can move around, I can look at this. And if you have multiple people with different headsets, or again, somebody back in the office that's doing the screen share, they're able to see exactly what you're looking at, even from different angles. So it's a tool that allows me to avoid having to find out that something doesn't fit too late. I can walk around and see the intent. I can see how the design is going to interact with the real world. And then I can start making changes or, you know, preparation for things beforehand. I'm not waiting for it to show up on site and then realize that, ooh, this isn't going to work. Now, understanding what this actually does and how you can actually work with it. Oh, and earlier, this is actually being recorded and it will be posted. So what it actually works with is a couple of different things. So the Surface itself has a plugin for two different tools right now, Revit and Navisworks, and it works with a lot of the different versions. So just about anything that you can work on, if I need to, I can pull that into Navis. So there's a lot of different file formats that are able to go in there. And then from there, what I can do is I can choose my models, I can upload my models, I can set things up and synchronize that back in. Now, this is specifically for Revit and Navis, and that's not to say that's the only way. So let's say I don't own Navisworks and I'm using it something that's not Revit. Well, in that case, you're not out of luck. All you have to do is log into the VisualLive website. So from that standpoint, what I can do is just upload my model files, and similar to how Navisworks is able to work with a large assortment of file formats, they also have 73 different formats that I can upload. So more than likely, whatever tool that I'm using can export out to one of these different formats, and then I can upload it into the VisualLive website. So one way or another, this is going to work fine. So now that I've got my data in the cloud, I've actually utilized it with the service. There's different services that I can tie into. So if I'm using OneDrive or Google Drive, what I can do is actually create issue tracking. And again, I'll show you what this means in just a little bit when I get into the service. So if I'm looking around the site, whether I'm working on HoloLens or a mobile device, I can see a problem, whether it's just looking at the model in a background, or I'm looking at the model superimposed in the real world, again, using that augmented or mixed reality. I can then take an image of that, screenshot it, mark it up, and create a report from that. Now, if I'm working with BIM 360, I can do the exact same thing, and it can also create an issue for me. And if I'm working in Procore, that allows me to work off of RFIs and punch lists. So depending on which cloud service I want to work with, I can actually integrate with that and sync some of my data around. Now, from a hardware standpoint, there's two main packages here. You've got the Mobile Live and the HoloLive. Mobile Live is what I would use on a mobile device. So whether it's an iPad, an Android phone, it'll work on either side, whether you're Apple or Android. Now, on the HoloLens side, it'll work for HoloLens 1 and 2. And they actually have an adapter here that you can utilize. So if I'm working off of a hard hat, which if I'm in the construction trade, more than likely I have to wear, this allows me to connect the HoloLens to the hard hat. So that way I can take advantage of the tools, but still make sure that I'm following safety codes. Now, the workflow that we follow for this is actually quite simple. I mentioned before that both Revit and Navisworks have their own plugin, as well as having the process of going through the VisualLive service from the website. So in this case, I'm importing my model through that. That'll go through the VisualLive service online. And then from there, all I need to do is log in to the actual app, whether on a mobile device or through the HoloLens, and that'll pull down the right model. And there's a couple of different ways that I can do that. So whether it's scanning a barcode, again, keeps it really simple. I don't even need to know what the name of it is, or just logging in and choosing the file that I want. And for now, I'm actually going to hop into that. So let me show you my app. So right now, what I'm looking at is the actual VisualLive app. So this is on my iPad, and I can orbit around a view, not unlike what I could do with other tools. Let me show you the whole process here. So what I can do is I can go to my load screen. This allows me to see the different models or workspaces or designs that I'm on. I can see the different locations here. You notice that you have a sync button on the far right here. So what this actually allows me to do, right there, is if I feel I'm going to be working off-site, I'm going to be online, maybe I go down to the sub-basement, I have to review my mechanical equipment, but there's no connectivity down there. What I can do is pull these models local, so that way I don't have to worry about needing to be on the cloud. So I can click on a model, say load, and that'll start that download. Now the other option I have is also, rather than hitting the load button, I have a scan button. That actually allows me to do a couple of things. So rather than having to actually pick that file up, I can scan a barcode, and that'll actually find my model and align it for me. That'll bring up my model. Again, I can orbit around this and I can look at it. I have two main methods of working through my camera. I can walk around, I can move up and down, I can turn on or off gravity. So if I'm trying to navigate a model, I can do it this way. Or I can do sort of more of a traditional 3D model where I view it around. Now, all the content that's in here is coming from, in this case, from Revit. So I took my Revit model, I exported it out, and I brought it in. And depending on how I choose to export it, I can choose to include certain properties. I can also turn on or off different elements. I can also move, scale, or rotate different things as well. And if I need to bounce around between different models, I can always choose load up a different one. And that'll load whatever it is that I need. And let me set this up real quick. Now, the different files that I have set up for my projects can really depend on what I want. And the nice thing is, when you're actually loading these in, it'll let you know that, okay, this file is a little bit too big. Maybe you want to cut this down. It modifies the amount of faces on your objects based on what you're actually going to be working with. So, and the amount of faces that you can work with, the size of your file, really is going to depend on the, I don't want to say its size, but maybe the version of the hardware that you have. So if you've got, let's say, like an old phone or an old tablet, you might not be able to work with as much. So I'll put it here now. Orbit my view. And I can see my model move on. I can also see the hierarchy of the elements here. So if there's certain things that I want to turn on or off, I can always modify that. So if something's in the way, I can turn it on, I can turn it off. I can also take measurements of elements. I can move that around. Now, these things here are pretty basic. Most tools that you might be using, if you're familiar with Den 360, you can do that there too. Where things really start to change on this, though, is where I go from navigate on the very top middle there. I change that from just navigating it like this to going into AR mode. So now what I'm looking at is basically augmented reality. I can look around my space, and what I can actually do is pull in my model. So as I look around here, I can turn this on. So that actually starts to figure out where I am. So this is actually using the iPad to start to look around my room. And now that it understands where I am, it picks that up. I can see my model in there. Now, in this case, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, I have a few things that I can see. I can see occluding, I can see X-ray, and I see distance filter. On a real project, I might have a lot of stuff all over the place. And maybe my hardware might not be able to handle all that. So I can modify the filtering. So it's only looking so far away. So that manages that. The other thing is my X-ray. So I can actually manage the translucency of this. So it makes it a little bit easier for me to read things. I can also change the occluding. When I turn that off, notice I see a lot more information here. What I'm actually looking at is elements that are under the floor. So if I turn on occluding, it's able to understand that those things are actually behind another object. That's where things start to change and to go from augmented reality to sort of a mixed reality, because it's aware of its surroundings. It understands that those pipes are actually behind that little partition. So it's not going to show them to me. But if I turn that off, now I can see things that are behind other objects. If I'm looking up at my ceiling, I can see that there's elements behind the ceiling or behind a wall. So from the standpoint of using this in construction, it's great. I can actually see where things are, where they're supposed to go. I can also use this for operations and maintenance, because if I'm walking through a building, I can look up at the ceiling and see all the duct, all the pipe. I can look at the wall and see all the conduit that's happening behind there. And all I need to do is tell it where I want to actually tie to. And in this case, I have a little drawing on the floor there that has a QR code that helps align it. And I can also align it by doing a 2-point. So basically, I can click on one end of a door frame and the other end, and that tells it where I'm supposed to be relative to the real world. Now, this is where I can view it. I can walk around it. You can see as I move around, I'm seeing more of my pipes. Now, in here, same thing. I still have the ability to measure. And I have a little blue dot in the center of the screen. So what I can do is I can tap on there. And now that lets me know how far away things are. Now, I can modify whether this is metric or imperial. I can also tell this to be snapping. So as I move around, hear that? I can then tap on an object and say that I want to snap on that. And I can get my dimensions off of this. So notice now it's actually jumping a little bit when I put it near an edge or near a corner. So it makes it easier for me to make sure I'm getting the accurate dimension that I want. And if I'm just trying to look for clearances, I can say plumb. And that basically will look at, see, well, what's my clearance? How much space do I have below that pipe? What's the distance between that element and the wall? And again, that's looking at the real wall versus my augmented piping. It's giving me the distance between them two, so I can check with my clearances. It's little things like that. Now, I also have a thing here called work sets. Think of work sets not in the term of, say, Revit, but more in the term of like layers or grouping. What things do I want to turn on? What things do I want to turn off? I can create those work sets and manage my file so that I don't have to see the whole thing all at once. I can manage it based on what I need to focus on at a time. Now, the other thing here is my issues. So let's say I'm looking at this and I realize that that only had 6 inches behind it. That actually should be more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this and say capture. That takes an image of that. I can put in an issue name. So I'll say pipe distance. And what I want to do is I want to mark this up. So now I've got that image that it took when I tapped the screen. It basically took a screenshot. So from there, I can pick a color. So 6 inches with a question mark. It's appropriately messy. And then you'll notice on the right-hand side here, I've got 4 cloud services. Based on what I've made a connection with on the VisualLive website, so I have to log in and make sure that I'm connected, I can choose which service I want to actually have this synchronized with. So right now I've got OneDrive chosen. So in this case, I click on issue, and it'll save it as an image and an issue for me. If I were to tap on the bubble next to BIM 360, I would choose which project I want to connect to, and it can create the issue for there. So I'll say upload, and this will have an image queue. Again, I might be in a basement, I might be somewhere where I have no connectivity, so this will save all of those until I get somewhere where I can actually upload and synchronize. Since I'm online now, it took care of it immediately. And that captured my issue and managed it for me and sent it in there. So anyone else in the project or has access to that folder will have access to that. Now, one of the other big aspects of this is my status. So when I tap on status, we'll be looking at the model, and in a second, everything's going to change color. Now, some of these pipes already are sort of an orange based on the system that they're a part of. But what's going to end up happening here, turn that off, is that this is actually going to end up testing, changing it based on the status of the installation. So if you look on the right-hand side, I've got 2 statuses that are being tracked. I've got not installed, which is all my orange, and I've got installed, which is the green elements. So let's say I'm out in the field and I'm looking at what's been done so far. I want to see how we're doing. So I'm just walking around, taking a look at things, and maybe modifying the X-ray so I can actually see through some of the objects a little bit, make sure that the actual element is in the right spot. And all I need to do to modify this is come through and start tapping on things. Yep. As I click or tap on the screen on different elements, it'll modify that and say that that is now installed. And if I accidentally click the wrong thing, no big deal. I tap on it again, and that takes care of it. Really quick, I can walk through the site, get close on things if I need to. And all of those elements are now set up as installed. So I can walk through the hall, just tap on everything as I move by. And you'll notice that there's a little button there that says Upload Report. What that actually will do is it's going to upload and modify a spreadsheet that I've got. And that's going to be tracking all of the status of my elements. So as I'm working on things, I can start to get an actual report and a schedule of where we are. So if I actually am managing my project and I say by a certain point in time, X number of ductwork has to be installed, we're planning on it. This gives me my method not only for going out in the field and tracking that and capturing the current status, but it also allows me to figure out a way where I can then manage that and bring that data back in. So I'm actually going to hop back over to my computer for a second and hop back over here. So just talked a little bit about the data collection where I can modify my status. So what'll happen is you're in VisualLive, and that'll actually output information into an Excel spreadsheet. And it's going to capture things like the element ID for the object. It's going to track, has it been installed? So in my case, I had 2 options, installed and not installed. What I can then do is, in my case, I used one of the tools that Microdesk has built called BIM or X Core. That exposed the element ID or the GUID of all my objects that I'm exporting. And then I just use a little Excel wizardry and XLOOKUP to say, I want you to look into this other file for the element ID. And then wherever you find that lines up with the Revit model, I want you to pull across the install status. What that means is that now I can pull the data live. Well, I shouldn't say live. Every time I update it, I can pull that data right from the export from VisualLive, and then I can actually synchronize that back into Revit. If I'm using something like Assemble, same exact thing. Inside of Excel, there's a tool for Assemble for me to update my model in Assemble. Or if I'm pushing it in the Navisworks, there's multiple ways to do this. But the idea now is that I've captured all my information in the field using VisualLive. Well, capturing data is nice, but if it doesn't go anywhere, if it's not beneficial to other things, or it's not able to continue to maintain the model, all the data in the BIM, it's not that much good. So in this case, I can pull that data back in, and let's say I'm looking at my Revit model here. I can take the standard view and then just create some view filters and say, okay, well, everything that is installed, I want you to show it to me as green. Everything that's not installed, show it to me as orange. So it's consistent with the view I had in VisualLive. And if I'm doing this in, say, Navisworks, again, that property value will still be updated. So I can pull in the installation status and create an appearance profile. So that manages that workflow. So this allows me to make sure that I'm round tripping that data. I'm taking advantage of all the great features of VisualLive. I'm out in the field. I can actually navigate my model. I can do that in the office. I can do that outside. I can walk around the field and actually see my models superimposed with the real world. I can make sure things fit where they're supposed to be. Now, with VisualLive, there's a couple of options here. So I just showed you a bunch of them. So you've got Standard and Pro. So the main difference that you're going to have with Pro is that interactivity with some of the cloud services. So you have an enterprise dashboard that allows you to track that. You can have integrations with things like the BIM 360 or Procore or the OneDrive that I was showing. But the ability to move your model, to view it in the field, to lock that so all I have to do is look at it quickly and it brings the model up, all that's part of the standard. Now, a lot of people with augmented or virtual reality, they feel that it's still bleeding edge. It's not really ready for use. The reason I like to show this slide is it shows that there are a lot of companies out there that are already using this. They're already taking advantage of this. So it's not like, I don't want to be one of the guinea pigs. It's like, no, this has been around for a while. No one's a guinea pig anymore. They're actually using it on active projects. And with the different packages, you've got different prices. And the key thing here is that there are discounts for the bulk purchasing. So the more you get, like anything else, the cheaper it gets, up to, I think, I want to say 40% off. So definitely don't quote me on that. I leave the numbers to the sales guys. But there's a lot of components here and a lot of different things that are useful based on, you know, what your role on a project is going to be. But there's a lot of different functions in here for everybody. So whether I'm actually in the office and I just want to get a better understanding of how my model is going to work, or I'm going out into the field and I want to ensure that everything is up to date, everything's where it should be. There's a lot of different benefits here. Okay. Awesome. Well, I know I got a lot of questions here, so let me start working on this. If somebody does have a question, please feel free to drop that in here. Alrighty. Gotcha. So a couple of people had a question with regards to the presentation. It is being recorded and it will be posted on the Microdesk YouTube channel. Another question. Okay. Another question. BIM 360 and VisualLive are essential softwares for BIM technology and construction. What's the difference between them? So easy way to break this down is that BIM 360 has a lot of components in it. So you've, from a simplicity standpoint, you've got the docs, the BIM Coordinate Pro, and Build. You also have Takeoff if you're looking at the unified platform. Visualizing your model is something that you can do in any of them. You can track issues with that. The key thing that VisualLive does on top of BIM 360 is it allows you to work on it in augmented reality. So can I do issues inside of VisualLive as well as BIM 360? Yes. The great thing is I can integrate the issues in VisualLive to BIM 360. So if I'm out in the field and I spot a problem, I can create that issue that will then communicate to the rest of the team in BIM 360. I would say VisualLive augments what you're already doing in BIM 360 or in Procore or OneDrive. There are a lot of things that you can do in BIM 360, like the model coordination or clash detection. VisualLive isn't meant for that, but it's meant for coordinating and seeing how things are being done out in the field, or understanding how a model actually works, being able to navigate around it. Another question, are there future prospects for VisualLive, and will it replace other software? Definitely yes on the future prospects. Replacing other software, it depends on the software. I don't see it replacing BIM 360, but I do see it having, in the future, a tighter integration with it. So for people who don't realize this, VisualLive actually got purchased by Unity not too long ago. Unity makes, or in the past had been known for making a video game engine. Now, what they've been doing, though, for the last several years is working on a version of that was specific for the AEC industry, Unity Reflect. And the goal of that was to say, okay, well, people that work in AEC, they need a tool that makes it very easy to navigate a model in real time and have it be fully rendered. So if you think about video games, all this model, all the geometry, they're rendering it gorgeously, and it's made to be moved through very smoothly and very fast. How can we do the same thing with a model that was designed for construction or architecture or MEP? So they're sort of merging the best of both worlds to actually provide that. And VisualLive handles a whole other aspect of that and will be more tightly integrated as time goes on. Good question, kind of ties into what I just said. Any advantage to knowing Unity if you're a user of the tools or supporter of users? I would say right now, not really, no. But over time, since again, it's a recent purchase by Unity, over time, I believe it will. It'll have a tighter integration to the Unity Reflect workflow, and in that case, a tighter integration to other services like BIM 360 for model reading. Okay. Okay, so I got a couple other questions. While I answer that, just want to bring this up. We have a couple of upcoming events. So one of our next webinars is going to be October 12th, where I actually talk about optimizing asset tracking in BIM 360. So figuring out how you can manage your assets and utilize a handful of different tools to synchronize that data around. Next one after that is going to be Michael Gonzalez. He's going to be talking about collaboration with Bluebeam and how you can use Bluebeam Review to work with your team and keep things synced and up and running. Another question here, is it used on facades? Yeah, it's actually, VisualLive is used for a lot of things. So the quick example that I showed you was more with mechanical spaces because it's easier to show when you're inside of an office. We have a couple of clients that use it out in the field. So for civil or infrastructure work. So if I scan something that tells me where I am and I'm near a manhole, I can walk around and I can see all the underground piping. So if everything is aligned correctly, I can see where am I supposed to dig. I can understand where pipes and conduit and everything else is. Again, that's the benefit of making sure you have good as-builts. If I'm working on a building exterior for a facade, I can make sure, okay, are things where I expected them to be? If we're doing an addition, I want to see that addition on the actual building before we go through with it. You know, maybe I want a proof of concept of how we're going to modify the face of the building or where the new entrance will be. So I think you could use it on just about anything. Well, although most of the examples that we tend to see are focused on construction, so you'll see piping and mechanical or structural examples, but I do believe it can be used for just about anything. Okay, let's see, any other questions? Alrighty, so with VisualLive, there's a lot of different things you can do with it. There is actually a free trial if you want to take it for a test run. If anybody has any questions moving forward, or you want to take a look at different things, you want to get a very specific demonstration on how it can be used for your project, like maybe you want to see how it can work on a facade and you have some help with that, definitely please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help out. Oh, good question. How do you align the Revit model with the actual space? So let me take a quick step back. So when you're inside of Revit, or Navisworks for that matter, what you'll end up doing is you're going to open up your VisualLive plugin. So in this case, what I can see is my plugin. I can choose the model name or description that I want to add to it. And then I have my placement settings. Now, the main two things here would be a place marker or the actual pick 2 points. Now, when I say place marker, what that actually is going to do is, let me bring up this real quick. That's actually going to look for me to place this thing. So you can see that piece of paper with the barcode and the north arrow. that will place a virtual version of that. You can kind of see it right here underneath the lock. That'll place a virtual family of that in my Revit model. So I would choose where is that going to go. So in this model, I actually put it right here in that little corner of the floor. And then I can also choose to pick 2 points. So like if I'm at a staircase, or I'm at a door frame, or I'm at a column grid intersection, this allows me to say I want to place point 1 here, point 2 there. And it would basically be, 1 there, 2. I go out into the field and I pick those 2 points in my model. I pick the 2 points in the real world, and that helps align everything to that. Now, the one thing I do want to mention with this is that it's not going to scale your building. Your building is the size it is. Those 2 points help with the alignment. So I don't have to worry about accidentally not picking exactly the same length, and suddenly what was 5 feet or a meter is now much bigger or much smaller. So the 2 points is not going to change the size. It's really just going to help you align your model with the real world. And with some of the features and functionality inside of the app, especially some of the newer devices like the iPad that has some depth sensing, that'll help you with the alignment. Good question. Alrighty, everybody, thank you so much for your time today. We definitely appreciate it. If anybody has any questions following this or suggestions for future webinars, please let us know. We always like to know what people are looking for to make sure that we're delivering the content that they're interested in. But again, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.